Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and this is a very, very special video for me to make. I have completed a kind of lifelong dream to read Marcel Proust's masterpiece, In Search of Lost Time, all 7 volumes. And like many people during the pandemic, I thought maybe now's the time. Maybe this is the time to devote to a piece of literature that's been so discussed, that is the most requested book to take to a desert island in the BBC's Desert Island Discs, the radio show where people are kind of projected to live on a desert island and what would they take in terms of music and books. And I have just heard about Proust's work for many, many years. He's an influence in so many of the writers that I love to read, and I've just always been curious. So much so that way back in, I think, the 1990s, I purchased this book. And this is In Search of Lost Time, Swann's Way, the graphic novel. I do love graphic novels, but I thought that this might be a way in for me to try it. And as much as I loved this graphic novel, I didn't take it any further. So when the pandemic hit and we weren't allowed to travel, everyone was kind of sheltering in place. My dear friend Leo of A Little Book Life, he and I decided that we were going to try it. We were going to read Proust, the first volume. So we went ahead and purchased the first volume. This is The Way by Swann. You'll find that there's a lot of confusion with this, almost how the Russian masters also have many different names, nicknames, diminutives, all sorts of things. The same thing holds true for Proust's masterpiece. So not only is the overall volume called different things, in some cases it's In Search of Lost Time. In other cases, it's Remembrance of Things Past. Same volumes, in essence, same book. In French, it's called À la Recherche de Temps Perdu, but a lot of French just say La Recherche. And, I understand why they do that. And then not only that, but sometimes as I explain the volumes, they may be called something different based on the publisher, based on the translator, so that can be a little confusing. And let's talk about translations. There are many different translators of Proust's work. I would say my favorite of the translators was Lydia Davis, and she did this version. This is the Penguin Modern Classics. I bought these from Blackwells, and I just love the covers. I love how simple they are. And when you're reading so many of these, having a nice light paper, easy to read font really helped me. Lydia Davis did this, and my understanding is she's starting the translation, or has started the translation for the second volume, which is quite exciting. I found her translations to be the most modern, the most accessible, and the most interesting. But I also think that she's the most recent translator, and I think that there are some of the other translators were a little more formal, a little stuffier, possibly. So what is this all about? And this is something my mother has asked me, like, why have you spent 2 years reading this? And yeah, it took me that long. I'll talk about that in a moment. So, this is a modern masterpiece. And when I say modern, I mean of the idea of modernism, the style of writing. He is very known for the ability to intricately hone in on the minuscule, the most sublime, beautiful moments that are happening, and go so deep you literally never thought that you needed to know as much about it. And yet the experience is almost I don't know, psychedelic. You're transported into these tiny little details. But at the same time, he'll also pan back really far and kind of give you these sweeping scenes of society, and then you go into a ballroom or a dinner or a party in a salon, and he goes from the character and kind of intricacies of all the relationships and the things that they're noticing and the things that they're doing, and how that might be a faux pas, or how that is a play to do something else, and kind of setting the kind of gossipy milieu so that you really understand who all these characters are in the hierarchy of French society, and Parisian society specifically. There are some amazing universal themes that fit for anyone, just about life, about memory, about just being alive and love. Love is a huge component of this series. But memory more important, and more importantly than that, involuntary memory. The memories that are unbidden, that just come, that transport you without your will to a place and time that happened in the past. The famous scene of him dipping a Madeleine into the tea, and the memories that evokes of his past, and that was in the first volume. He's known for incredibly long sentences, wild diversions, very long passages where nothing seems to happen, but it's all about the details. And so the first tip I have is be okay with a fairly plotless long series. You're there for the journey, all of the journey, not just getting from stop to stop. So this was written in 1913, and the first English translation appeared in 1922. It's very much written about the Belle Époque and the fin de siècle, the turning from one century into the next. And it's very much set amongst the elite of Paris. And our young narrator, who remains, I think only maybe 2 or 3 times do we actually hear his name, and it's Marcel. And sometimes he'll even do this little wink and nod kind of thing, like Marcel, like the author of this book. It's very much part of what we now know to be autofiction. Something like that didn't exist back then. And so it's a very bold choice for him not to allow his narrator to really be named over and over again. But we're so deeply inside his thoughts and inside his perspective that we kind of inhabit that world ourselves. So just as the titles vary in this, so do the names of the people. So it's, as I mentioned, it's kind of like Russian literature. Depending on the context of the conversation, he could be using a first name, he could be using a title, he could be using the full name or a familiar name. And so that really confused me for a long time. So my first tip for you will be to keep a little log of the names as you find them and the relationships between the people. This becomes very, very important, as it's a fairly insular community that he's describing, and the characters will appear throughout most of the volumes in various, they kind of come to the foreground and then retreat to the background. But the relationships between, especially among the royalty, become very important. Now, as I mentioned, this is a fairly plotless book. We're following this man as he remembers his life from being a very young boy in the family home where he is just obsessed with his mother's attention, to when he becomes an old man and is a writer. And so that's the story. And then through there is love and memory and society. And our narrator is a pain in the ass. Our narrator is obnoxious. He's like the ultimate emo boy who just, cries about women all day long. He's a horrible poser. He's a social climber. He's trying to get the right introductions to the right places and thinking that it's going he's going to impress them with his brilliance. Doesn't always happen, obviously. But regardless of that, it's still worthwhile. Just know that there are going to be times where you want to strangle this narrator, without a doubt. Be ready for an insufferable narrator, and just know that that's part of the maturation process as he goes through in his life. So why do this? Why do this to yourself? Why did I do it to myself? As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a passion project. This is something that you do because you've heard. If you love literature, if you love reading, if you're curious about the influences of great writers, you almost owe it to yourself to give this a try. And I would say it is completely possible to read the first volume and be okay, and to walk away having a sense of who Proust is as a writer. It is completely possible. But you are robbing yourself of that full, enveloping experience of this kind of saga, of this insular community, and learning so much more, and being involved in their lives in such an interesting, intimate, sometimes perspective. I would also say that obviously his writing is remarkable. It is remarkable. So when they talk about something Proustian, I see it now. I see it when I come across it. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like, and that I think has helped me as a reader. There's almost every single emotion under the sun available through these books. Not only are we going through this one individual life story, but all of the people he comes into contact with, the rich, the poor, the royalty, the commoner. There's so much here that is explored deeply. This is, I think, why people want this in their desert island reads. It's not just about the span. It's not just about the number of pages. It's about what's contained inside those pages. I found that the history portion what I learned about Paris during this time period, specifically in a little later in like the third volume, the Dreyfus affair becomes really prominent. And the Dreyfus affair was a situation where a man who was Jewish was wrongly accused of being a traitor, and it rocked Parisian society, and people took sides, and it became a means of anti-Semitism rearing its head in Paris and really making itself known and present. And Proust does a remarkable job at highlighting the different people and the ways the positions and the currents were flowing in terms of accepting and fighting against the Dreyfus affair. It was the most talked about thing in society in the moment, and it really polarized Parisian society. Another reason why I think you should read the series is the women characters. Marcel Proust did a remarkable job at all of these women, even though it's being told through the eyes of this really insufferable character. One of the things that's been postulated recently is that a lot of the women are stand-in for men that he loved. And so there is speculation that he was gay, bisexual maybe, but he definitely had love affairs with men. And so that has a sense of really giving these women some interesting depth that you don't usually find, because he's writing about them not as women, but as fully fledged beings that he wants to possess in throughout his entire life. He's always chasing after women. He always wants to own them, and he never understands them. But the fact that he knows that that it becomes obvious that he doesn't is, I think, quite interesting. Another reason to read this book is there are so many characters that are gay. From the very first book, I remember Leo and I kind of say, wait a minute, did we just read a lesbian scene? Is that what we just read? And it was just so natural. So just there it is. The young boy sees something through the window of a woman and her lover, her woman lover. But the gay storylines become much, much, much more prevalent as you go further into the books. It becomes very central to some of the stories of some of the characters. And it's not just gay men, there's lesbians as well as homosexual men. He uses a little bit of old-fashioned language, but I think the concepts and what he's bringing forth are very interesting based on what was expected and known of gay culture at the time. Now, it wasn't illegal, but it also wasn't really considered done. It was something that was still hidden and not necessarily approved by society. But I found that to be a fascinating piece that I just was not prepared for. I didn't know that was in here. And then the last reason is just all of the women characters. There are so many phenomenal women characters in here. We've got Françoise, who is one of the funniest characters in literature. She is their maid, housekeeper. She's always a presence around and is absolutely devoted to his grandmother, and is someone who always great for the comic relief. The way he writes her is with this deep love and reverence, but at the same time able to kind of poke fun and see some of her silly flaws. She's just an absolute delight. I would say Aunt Leonie is also hysterically funny. You know, she's this woman who was she was kind of an invalid in her later years, but she knew everything that happened outside that window from her bedroom. And all the ways that she pulled strings from this room that she was confined to was absolutely remarkable. We have Odette, the very famous coquette that Swann falls in love with in the very first volume. We have the Duchess de Guermantes, and she is someone who our narrator fixates very, very early on. We have Gilbert, who is the daughter of Odette, that is probably a more fitting companion for him than a fascination he develops for Odette. And we have Albertine, who is kind of this bad girl who actually runs with a girl gang, and she stole my heart when she first came into the books. And I love these women. I love them. I want to know more about them. I wish someone would write a book from their perspectives, but it'll never happen because no one wants to touch this masterpiece, and I get it. But oh, do I want those books. So how to read Proust. I struggled with it. It took me 2 years. Yeah, pretty much 2 years. But I also made a lot of just kind of silly mistakes. And so let me kind of talk to you about it. I'm going to talk you through the volumes. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'll give you a little bit of a grounding in all of them so that you get a sense of, if you want to start this project, what it's going to be. So we talked a little bit about Volume 1, The Way by Swann's or Swann's Way. I really recommend Lydia Davis's edition. There's another volume, I think, that's available in the United States that is a beautiful cover. It's just decorative. It doesn't have an image. So this is about his childhood. First part is his childhood in Cambrai. He's kind of taken back and remembers being a very, very young child, desperately enamored with his mother and just wanting his mother's attention. Very Oedipal types of things going on. Very angry, doesn't want to spend time with his father, shuns his father, but just wants his mother's adoration and ray of light on him at all times. And you get a sense of what a mama's boy he is and how he is going to be a pain through his entire life. It comes through very, very clearly here. But the family in Cambrai and the town and the nature scenes of the family taking their walk. They can go the Méséglise way or the Germantes Way, hence the introduction of the Guermantes family. In the second part of this book, we spend time with Swann, and it's one of the few times that we leave our main narrator and are with someone else entirely. And we are with Swann as he falls in love with a woman that he shouldn't, and her name is Odette. And this is all about this man going from a very rich and do what he wants, kind of playboy bon vivant, to becoming obsessed with this woman and really succumbing to her charms. That is, in essence, what this book is about. In the next volume, this is In the Shadow of the Young Girls in Flower. Sometimes it's also called Within a Budding Grove. This is, I'll show you a little closer there. Again, the same series. You could see all of the tabs. I mean, I went through so many tabs. There's so much richness here. This is really about his emo teen years. He travels with his grandmother to Baalbek. He meets some other people that his grandmother is aware of and knows, and he comes in contact with very well-established dukes, barons, members of royalty, and of which he just is obsessed with. He, as a little social climber that he is, he's always looking for entree. And in this volume, he meets the girl gang, which delights me to no end. Those scenes were just some of my favorite scenes so far, and of all of the scenes in Proust. It was such a surprise. I didn't expect it, and I just loved these young ladies. In the third volume, we have the Germantes Way. In this book, he's really in Paris society now. He's going to the salons and the dinners. He has met Robert Saint-Loup, who we met in the last volume, and he's becoming very attached to him. They're running around and going to all of these places. He meets Robert's lover, who is a young woman who is also of coquettish ill repute, and watches him fall in love with her and then lose his mind with jealousy. And this is where the Dreyfus affair starts to complicate Parisian society. And we start to hear people talk openly about what they think of that case. And suspicion that that he is not innocent, and pleasure that he was found guilty. In Volume 4, Sodom and Gomorrah, this is where everything picked up for me. And if you can make it through the first three, then it's almost like a downhill slalom after this. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. Look at that cover. This is where I think the gay characters really come out into the foreground. We have the Baron Charlus, who we've met in previous volumes. All of a sudden, he becomes a mainstay because he's trying to take our narrator under his wing, and he has a lot of connections and a lot of power. There's a lot of conversation about gay culture in Paris at the time in this volume. And a lot of this is about the machinations. Think Real Housewives meets Paris high society. It's very much about which salon is better, and all of the different infighting. And we meet the Duchess Guermantes and her family much more intimately than we have before. And so we're deepening the relationships with these characters in this volume. Now, in these Penguin editions that I have, the Penguin Modern Classics, this has volumes 5 and 6 bound together. This was also very confusing to me, because then this total volume is only six collections of books, but it's actually 7 volumes. They published it in 6 physical book editions. Very confusing. This is The Prisoner, also known as The Captive in some cases, and The Fugitive. So volume 5 is The Prisoner, volume 6 is the Fugitive. So I'm going to keep the synopsis of this actual physical book very simple. Volume 5 is that he wins, or so he thinks. And then volume 6 is he loses and cries a lot. Here is that one. And there's also a transformation he transforms into and takes on the same type of scenarios that he's witnessed when he was younger. He witnessed other people do. It's the cyclical pattern. He also gets sucked into the maelstrom of some of these emotions and behaviors. But it reads fast, fast, fast. And then the final book. This is Finding Time Again, or it's also Time Regained. In this book, I remember marveling at how he pulled it all together. He brought all of the characters into play. He referenced us back, took us back to Cambrai. We feel like we've been on a journey. We feel like we know how this has all transpired. And we see what his future looks like as an author. I think in terms of an ending, I was so unbelievably gratified. Horribly sad to say goodbye to all of these people, but so gratified at the ease and brilliance of the full wrap-up of this entire series. So that's a summary of kind of high level what happens. There is so much in there though. I really only barely skimmed the surface. So now let me give you my tips if you've actually stayed this long and are curious and want to dip your toes in. I would say, don't be precious about the work. That's something I had to learn the hard way. And you may have, if you watch my channel regularly, you may have heard me say it along the way, that I had to let go of the fact that I'm reading a masterpiece and just read it like a normal book. There's enough there that you can read it like a normal book. The beauty will come out, it'll slap you in the face. You don't have to go searching for it. You don't have to make copious notes and all of that. It's there. And the more you get stuck on this idea that this is like the most amazing book ever, it will slow you down, which could be great. You may love that. Like I loved reading volume 1 very, very slowly. I think that helped me kind of get my foothold into what his style was. But I don't think you need to read that in the same way, as I kind of explained through the arc of what happens. And I will also say, no shame in leveraging the audiobook. I think the audiobooks can help you, but it will be very confusing in terms of the names and the characters because of all of that switching that happens. So I'd say maybe consider a combo. I think that would help you tremendously in maintaining a pace with the reading. trust that he's going to deliver. He's going to meander in a million different ways, in side alleys or wild thoughts, or the way the shape of a cloud in the sky. He'll bring you back and you'll be back on track, but you're going to be better for that journey. Not every sentence is a masterpiece. Not every book is as strong as the others. So keep that in mind, that it's okay to not be enjoying a section, not enjoying a type of scene, and skim it. It's okay. It's okay. The last thing I'll say is unless you're planning on only reading the first volume and you're like, I just want to taste, I don't necessarily want to read everything, I would say, if you think you're going to want to read the whole volume, the whole set of volumes, I would read them back to back. And the reason I say that is because so many details, so detailed, that I can't imagine coming back to something like this and trying to remember who that person was, what is the context, what's happened, why does this person not like this person, what's going on. It's that rich that I think that it benefits from just plowing on through and seeing if you can get to that final volume and complete it. This was by far one of the best reading experiences of my life. I cannot speak more highly of what I absorbed through it. How I look at things is a little different. I recognize Proustian ideas, concepts, terminology, phrasing now in a way that I never would have otherwise. And this was a 5-star experience. I will reread this again, not for like 10 years, for sure. But I already miss them. I already miss his voice. I already miss the experience of being in Paris and Cambrai and Baalbek and all of these characters. So I would love to know in the comments below, are you thinking of reading the full volumes? Are you thinking of just reading Swann's Way? Or The Way by Swann? Have I turned your thoughts around in any way? Have I turned you for it? Have I turned you against it? What is your inclination? I would love to know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this, and I really do hope that some of you are so inspired to pick up all 7 volumes. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.